the current sort of life sort of reveals to us where we have resistance. And so, like, what we can do is we can either choose to ignore, the places in our lives where the resistance is, met by the current, because, we begin to become uncomfortable once we become in proximity to, whatever it is that, brings up this feeling of dread inside of us. Or, we can allow the current to be the vehicle that, once we feel that resistance, then we sort of engage in faith, essentially. And then, a faith that the current is telling us, to move in the proper direction. So, often where we feel uncomfortable is sort of like where there's a message for us, essentially. That is sort of like how we know that God wants us to do something in this specific area of our lives. Is there's something uncomfortable, we come into proximity with it, and then, it's like a matter of like, how do we approach this, and then I'll learn to integrate that energy and learn to allow current to flow in that area where perhaps before it was impeded, because we were like, in our heads we had something else in mind, that, that perhaps we could escape from some uncomfortable, thing that keeps, re-emerging in our lives. When something uncomfortable keeps manifesting in our lives, I think it's usually a sign that in some way we're not stepping into, who we are. And who we are is somebody that is, who we are on this, in this plane of existence, is not who we are in reality. Who we are in reality is a spirit, a being that is observing the world through this body. And this body exists essentially as a tool to manifest the desires of, of the forces of nature, the forces, the greater archetypes, that exist within the greater realms, within the higher self. So, and the higher self has many aspects, and you could call those aspects archetypes, or you could call them gods, because they're sort of the personification of a certain principle within, the greater self. And the greater self is sort of, seeking through these various archetypes. It is, sort of having a conversation with itself. So, to put this into human terms, Carl Jung did us a great favor by, putting forth concepts that would make more sense to a materialistic sort of mindset, by calling it archetypes that exist within, the collective unconscious. And so, it is, I would say, pretty ridiculous to argue with the idea that, the unconscious, does not exist uh, in the current way we live. So, if you say, oh, I'm totally conscious of everything that I do, I'm this person, and I'm totally aware of everything that I want, and all of my actions in life are intentional things that are under my control, so, so what you're saying is that you know exactly what's, going on inside of your brain. But, science knows for a fact that there's many different parts of the brain that are communicating with each other. And so, the way you could look at this is, these different parts are kind of like the different archetypes that exist within nature. these principles that have manifested into this realm, and then taken the form inside of our body to have this communion with each other, to sort of reunite the greater self, because the greater self sort of wants to be free. And how do you become free? You become free by acknowledging the different voices that exist within the collective of your being. And so you're not really free if you're imprisoning part of yourself. And what does this look like in terms of Jungian terms? When you imprison part of yourself, well, that part goes into the unconscious. That part does not go away. It goes into the shadow. It goes into the anima or the animus. It's the part of yourself that you put outside of yourself, so to speak. And so what we're learning to do as human beings here on earth is paying attention to the current within us. What is the current within us? It is the feelings that are strong, that live inside of us, that are, we label them as desire, but all it really is essentially the forces of nature wanting to come into alignment with themselves and into a greater state of coherence. And so each one of us has been given the opportunity to take part in this sort of divine activity of bringing greater order into the universe through this physical, what we call the physical nervous system. But in truth, there's no real, even scientists are beginning to understand there's no truly substantiality to the physical world, because we have to admit that through quantum physics, that things exist within a wave form. And what is a waveform? A waveform is essentially sort of like information that is not coalesced, and then once it coalesces, it appears material, but the truth is it's still energy. So what we call the physical realm is more like information that is conveniently put onto the surface of our senses. And our senses are essentially God experiencing himself, and then as we learn to communicate the different parts of our spirit, the different parts that exist within what we call the unconscious, what is actually the truth is, it's not so much, once you begin to integrate these different parts of your unconscious, quote unquote, you begin to realize your unconscious is not really the unconscious. The unconscious is the superconsciousness. It is your actual self. And then when you allow your actual self to flow, then you begin to realize who you really are. So what's interesting is, once you begin to realize who you really are, your decisions are going to come more from a fluid state. And in order to achieve this, we have to, to get there, in the beginning, it requires faith, because in the beginning, when we feel the current, we're met with resistance often. And this is not, the root of the issue. The root of the issue is that when we meet the resistance, is that we cower away from, the resistance, rather than examining it and asking ourselves, what is it about this situation that is making me so shrink away from who I really am? Why am I allowing this thing? Why am I outsourcing my power in this area and telling myself this is not something that I am able to integrate into myself as something where I allow myself to have mastery over myself, to be able to approach the situation in a more fearless and faith filled way. And so, yeah, uh, yeah, much of our life is essentially, you know, an exercise in it's an exercise in letting go of this idea that we're here to make ourselves miserable, essentially, in order to achieve some goal down the road. What we're actually here to do is to find what it is that is true, within us. And then if we feel uncomfortable with that, we look at it and we ask ourselves, how does this apply to me? Why is this making me uncomfortable? How can I look at the situation and make peace with it? So essentially, that is, this is, one of the pathways that has been shown in this area is, with, sort of what Jesus's message was, is, forgiveness. Because in forgiveness is acceptance. It's not acceptance necessarily so much of what is outside of yourself, but acceptance of what is within. And when you realize that, what is within is the true reality, and that the forces outside of yourselves don't actually have any real power over you, then you begin to feel forgiveness automatically, because you realize that what is happening outside of yourself is not of yourself, and what has happened to you is not of you. And so it is simply an aspect of reality that is, impacted us in a way to show us something, to reveal something to us. And, we can either, choose to see ourselves as victims and continue to go through life with resentment and a feeling of powerlessness, and a feeling of, like, essentially making our happiness contingent upon somebody else's ability to make, reparations, and, confessing their sins, and, atoning. But when we do that, when we make our happiness contingent on other people in this way, where we continue to hold on to resentment for them, what we're doing is essentially we're putting our attention on something outside of ourselves that doesn't truly exist. And within that, we sort of give away our power, to the very people in this world who would hold us hostage, with this, with this lure of holding on to resentment. So, forgiveness is more about letting go of resentment than it is to, like, totally be, cool with everything that, people do in the world. It is just, recognizing that this is not really about you. I mean, it may have appeared to be about you, but it's not about you. The crimes and the sins that are committed against us, they're not actually personal, to us. The people, the voices, that we acquire from the outside world would have us believe that there's some relationship between us and them. But what we must do is we must break that relationship with this, with our abusers, essentially, with the voices of abuse, by realizing, oh, they don't really exist, and I don't need anything from them. I absolutely do not need anything from them, because that is not where I will find fulfillment within myself. Fulfillment within myself will come as a result of faith in the goodness of life, essentially. and the integration of, understanding how, the different voices within me, want to come into order. So, like when we hold on to resentment, we're essentially making our own fulfillment contingent upon somebody else's behavior who is not likely to alter it, because they sort of function as a person sort of sleepwalking through life, and just like a bull in the china shop is just sort of destructive and unconscious. And when we recognize that this is all something that is playing out externally, but it is also something that has something to do with in ourselves, because here is where it goes back to sort of the personal responsibility, is the feelings that have been elicited in us, and the issues in our lives that exist are these are things that we must recognize are something internal that we must sort of integrate into the greater part of ourself. And then we're able to look at all situations with a new kind of dispassion, and realize whatever may come in this situation, I will be at peace with it. I will be at peace, not through some act of violence against ourselves, but through the recognition of allowing the different voices in our mind to really speak. And so, in order to do this, Carl Jung developed something called active imagination technique. And in that way, that was his way of allowing the different parts of ourselves to speak honestly and truthfully, because the act of that would be essentially sitting down and asking, okay, you would literally ask your unconscious, okay, unconscious, what would you like to show me today? And then you just sort of allow the images to flow into your head, and then what resonates, you begin to write that down. So that is one way of integrating. Another way of integrating is having a conversation with God, essentially, and asking, okay, God, what is it that I need to learn about this situation? What is it why is it painful for me to look at this thing? And why is it that what I want out of this circumstance is not, aligning with who I really am? Why is it not, why do I feel blocked in this area? And then if you really are quiet, and you learn to be fearless sort of with what, and you have faith in the answer that God will provide to you, then you begin to get the answers. You say, okay, why am I suffering? And then God might ask you a question of, okay, why is it that you are holding on to suffering? Essentially, you might get an answer like this, and then you say, well, I'm holding on to suffering because there's been people in this life who've abused me. And then God, you sort of go back to God, okay, so what would you like to change? Then God might ask you, what would you like to change about this situation? And then you'd say, well, I want to feel free, and I feel blocked by these people from the past, because I still feel uncomfortable inside, because I don't trust this world. And then God may say, well, why don't you trust this world to support you? And you might say, because of what I just said. And then God might say, okay, well, look deeper in that. Why don't you feel safe in this world? Why don't you trust? And you might say, because I'm afraid of what I really want. And then God might ask you, well, what is it that you really want? And then you might say, that's a really painful thing for me to look at. Can you tell me, God, can you help me to have the strength to really see what it is that I want out of this life? And then God may tell you something like, you want to give yourself to love. You want to love in this world. And then you may ask God, okay, why is it that I can't love this world? And then God might say, you will love this world once you can truly love yourself. And then you might start feeling the love within yourself. Start feeling, oh, okay, there is this feeling of love that I've had this resistance to. And I have, held these other people responsible that are outside of myself, that I can't control. I've held them responsible for me holding in my love because I was afraid to allow that love to flow freely. If, lest I'd be accosted by the world. And then God might say, then have faith that though you feel fear, to let your love flow, that allowing yourself to feel what you truly feel and to feel that love within yourself, that is what is real. And no matter how discouraging your environment is or what the people in this world say, trust in that feeling of love, because that's where your strength is. That's where you're truly free, because in that love is the acceptance of all things as they truly are, not as they've been told to you that they truly are, but as they really exist within the undifferentiated and fully integrated magnitude of what is possible in the universe. And you are not a part of this. You are not a fallen angel. You are here as a bright being of light. You are here as a bright being of love. And no other voice in this world has the power to take your love away from you. So remember to be true to that feeling of love inside of yourself and to allow it to flow, even when it is frightening, even when the response from the world is awkward and painful and you feel misunderstood. Because once you learn to listen to that voice of love and allow it to be the greatest voice in your life, the loudest voice inside your mind, because it is flowing naturally from you, because you're always going, whenever you feel the resistance, you go back into your feelings and you allow yourself to really be truthful with what it is that you're experiencing and why it is that you're experiencing it and what is holding you back and what you can do to move forward. Then all other voices become like the voices of children, because you begin to recognize who is operating and speaking from an intellectual, childlike state and who is actually speaking from a place of wisdom and integration and true understanding of what it is in this universe, what it is in this realm we are here meant to do. And so, this is, I've had many conversations like this with God, and I will probably continue to have conversations like this with God, because I am merely a reflection of God's will to manifest something here on earth. And the same is true about you. You and everyone else on this planet is a vessel to create integration and greater harmony, and to learn the truth that love is, in fact, present at all times and in all parts, various parts of the brain, the various archetypes that exist within the higher self, within the different archangels, within the different the pantheon, within the different gods within the pantheon, you know, within the different religions of the world. These are all aspects of the self, and they vibrate on slightly different frequencies, and so they make war with each other, and they seem to oppose each other, but in truth they are all, you know, the truth is they're all a reflection of God's desire to become more integrated, to become a truly fluid being that is, you know, that gives his children to know the same love that he knows to be true. And so, you know, there's a lot of disintegrated voices in society, and we need to step away from them and learn to listen only to God's voice, and to only listen to the voice of love that he has given to us from the inside, to know ourselves, to truly know how blessed we are, to truly know what we are capable of, and to, with faith and fearless courage, move forward into the true nature of our existence. So this has all been me essentially allowing myself to flow freely with whatever it was, you know, that wanted to pour forth from, you know, the greater voice inside of me that is connected. You know, allow yourself to, you know, not get caught up on any of the details of what has been said. You know, it is more important that when I speak, that you pay attention to what you feel as I speak. And this is true in all situations. You know, pay attention to what you feel when you listen to others. Pay attention to what it is that they're truly saying, because even a liar will reveal the truth to you if you pay attention to what it is, the feeling that they elicit within you. And so if anything that I've said seems untrue, search your, you know, don't trust me. Don't trust this voice, because this voice is merely a reflection of what actually is going on in the greater realm of consciousness. And, you know, what is really true is what is inside of you and what needs to become in harmony and greater alignment with, you know, who you are. So I encourage people to trust themselves, and, you know, the path to breaking down barriers of resistance may lead you down into many different places, that, you know, seem to be dark places. You know, they may even make you feel like you're going against, you know, God at times. But remember, no matter where you are in life, no matter how dark the valley of the shadow of death gets, you're always in the right place to enter back into heaven, and to allow yourself and to remind yourself, whatever it is where you find yourself and whatever experience that you're currently undergoing, whatever dark place it is that you're in, this is a place for you to gather yourself up and remind yourself, this is merely information that is here for me to allow myself to truly accept myself, no matter what situation that I find myself in. So, you know, be a forgiving and loving person to those around you, but most importantly, you know, learn to forgive yourself, you know, because within the resentment that we hold for others is usually, the truth is that there's some way in which we feel that, you know, we failed. So remember that there is no failure, and you have not failed, and that whatever place you are is exactly the place that you need to be in order to remind yourself that even in this place you are loved, even in this darkness you are loved, even in this horrible void that you find yourself in, even with all these, horrible feelings of energy and waves that are blasting you and making you want to jump, off a cliff. Even there, love exists. Even there, God is still holding you in his loving arms. And it's not that he needs to catch you. He is already with you. He is already with all of us. And you are safe wherever it is that you are. Just remember that you are there by allowing yourself to feel whatever it is that you feel truly, and the true magnitude of what exists within yourself, and fully allowing yourself to integrate that into understanding that this too is part of life. This too is part of love. And this too is something, no matter how challenging it is something that I can integrate into my being, because this is part of God. And this is exactly the experience that I needed to open my eyes to the fact that love is in all places. And, I am speaking as somebody here on earth who's been in dark places. I may look like I'm pretty, happy and healthy as I am now, but believe me, I've been in very dark places. I have really seen some things in this world and had some experiences and met some people and had a long journey of darkness. Most of my life has been a journey through the valley of shadow of death. And so I'm not speaking to you as somebody who doesn't know pain. I know pain. I know pain very well, and I know it very deeply. And now I know that this pain was a gift. It was a gift for me to see that God loves me. God loves us, even when we have been cast out by every member of society, and everyone has told us that we're wicked, horrible creatures beyond redemption. That is false. All of that is false. And at the end of the day, you need to be your true advocate. You need to step back into your true self and allow yourself to be the loving being that is going to be with you and carry you through this life. And that what you're here to do is not simply to serve your own sorrow and your own need, but that when you step back into that love within yourself, you realize that you have an infinite amount of energy to boldly put forth something, to manifest something in this world that is going to uplift the lives of those around you. And it's not a matter of any circumstance. It doesn't matter what the political situation is. It doesn't matter what the religious situation is. It doesn't matter, what the corporations are doing. It doesn't matter if we're all slaves, in the eyes of Caesar. It doesn't matter if we're all crippled. It doesn't matter if we're crawling on our, on our fingertips, because the rest of our body is completely mangled. We are in the right place. We are always in the right place to give to the world what needs to be given. So we are here to give our gift. We are here to give the gifts that live within inside of ourselves. So bring forth that gift and put it into the universe. And remember that you are here to bless the world with your love, and that you have been blessed with love yourself. And so this is, what I wanted to share with you guys today. I had no plan for any of this to come out. It just did. Whether you want to call it channeling or, tapping into the unconscious or the collective unconscious, that's, fine, whatever you want to interpret it to be. To me, what it is essentially is simply a matter of, having integrated the energies within inside myself and having the courage to speak them. So, I hope this has been helpful perhaps to somebody, and because it's been helpful for me to speak it, because I feel you know, a very amazing light of love inside of my chest right now. And by allowing myself to speak in this way, I feel it more strongly. So, you know, you guys are all blessed and loved out there. So, remember that, and have a good one, and continue to enjoy life.